Hey, what's up? Jason here from Unity3D.College. Ever since I got into the game industry, I've heard a lot about crunching. If you're not familiar with the term, it's essentially a system where game companies don't quite budget and plan right, and they have their developers work excessive overtime, usually near the end of a project to get the thing done. They've got a game that's going to release on a certain date, and not enough time to get it done, working 40 hours a week. So people start working 50, 60, 70, even 80 hours a week. And sometimes these horror stories can get really bad. Red Dead Redemption 2, there were a lot of complaints about people working 80 hours a week for extended, very long periods of time. Some companies even have their people working these hours almost permanently, basically until they burn out or quit. Now, what got me kind of rethinking about this was a post titled "Should I Refuse to Crunch" on Reddit. And I thought it was a pretty interesting topic because, well, in that case, the developer's project is a bit behind. It's not going to be done in time. The investors want them to crunch and get the thing done. They don't want to pay extra for it. They want it done at whatever the original budget was. And the developer wanted to know whether or not they should refuse to work those extra hours. And that's kind of a hard one to answer because in that case, it's not necessarily the investor's fault that things are wrong. It's not the developer's fault necessarily. It's probably more somewhere in the middle. The management layer tends to be where the issue is. Usually it's a kind of a side effect of overpromising and underplanning, and also waiting and holding out on accountability until the last second. So instead of making sure that things are completely on track all the way and adjusting and fixing as time goes by, they just kind of assume that some magic's going to happen, or that productivity and time availability is just going to increase. Of course, outside of video games, magic's not real, so it falls apart and people end up working insane hours or getting burned out, fighting with their managers and quitting, and it's just not a great environment. But that's not really the case at most places. Now, I've looked at the surveys and saw that about half of people are working 40 hours a week, and the other half are working a little bit more than that. Some of it's crunch time, some of it's not, but I think that alone just shows that at least half of the jobs are not requiring crunch time, and that are not requiring these insane hours. And that really lines up with what I've seen professionally as well. Now, in most companies I've worked for, there was a little bit of crunching, but it was primarily optional. Most of the people that were crunching were either leads for the team, which in that case, I think that if you're signing up to be a lead for a team, you should expect that there's going to be some crunch time and some overtime. You're in charge, you're responsible. It's very important that you're there, and just expect, if you're going to be in that leadership role, that you're going to be working harder than everybody else. But if you're not in that role, well, what are some cases that could lead to crunch time that I think is valid? I'd say the first one is if you're working on a system that's integral, important, needs to be done, and just isn't done yet. So it's a system that you're working on that just needs more time. And I've seen this a lot in, like I said, in previous places that I worked, where the people who were crunching were either those leads or the people that were building something new that just kind of was new to them. So they didn't, I guess, estimate it exactly right. They didn't know exactly how long it was going to take. They underestimated it, and they're going through and fixing things and trying to get it right. Now, in this case, it's also been people who wanted to do it. They didn't want to not work and not get the thing done. They didn't want to have the system either be pulled from the game or be crappy and buggy. So these people were also very involved in the project, and I would say they were crunching, but it wasn't like it was a forced crunch. It's much more of I'm going to do this, I want to get this done, and I'm going to get it done on time and make it perfect. And that's the case with a lot of people in the game industry. When you see those numbers that 40 or 50% are working 40 hours a week and then the rest are working more, a good chunk of those people are kind of like me and some of my friends who just really love their job. They love making games, and they'll make games for fun. Like, if they're not working, they're thinking about it, they're excited about it, they've got some new idea that they want to put in there, and they're just constantly working, but it doesn't feel like work. So it's important to think about those when you're looking at the numbers for just the amount of hours that people work. Some people, sure, they work 60 hours a week, but you couldn't get them to work 40 hours a week. Of course, there are definitely some, like I said, horror stories and bad places to work. EA used to be one of them that was the worst. I've heard it's gotten a lot better. Rockstar, I've heard almost all horror stories from everybody that's worked there. They all love the projects. They love the game. They love their coworkers. They hate the process. They hate the work-life balance or the lack of it, and they hate that they're constantly, required to do a lot more work than they're actually paid for. Of course, I don't have a huge sample size of Rockstar employee friends either, so that could just be anecdotal, I guess. So how can you avoid crunch time? Well, there are a couple easy things you can do. The first is just to investigate companies before you take jobs there. Go look and see what kind of work-life balance they actually have. See if they're requiring constant, insane crunch time. If they want you to work 60 hours a week and that's the normal or the average, it's probably not a great place to work. Now, it could be that you want to take that job just for the project and for the experience. That's fine, but don't stay there forever and get burned out and ruin your life and start hating game development or something. Now, one other thing you can do is just estimate better. Make sure that the tasks that you have match up with the time that you have available. And don't take on more than you can actually get done in that period. If you do, you're just kind of lying to yourself, you're lying to the management, and you're contributing to making crunch time a requirement. So if you think that something is going to take longer than you have budgeted for it, let people know right away. It's very possible that changes can be made early that avoid these problems. Of course, you can't always avoid all crunching. You never know when you're working on a game. Sometimes the thing that you thought was going to be awesome and fun just isn't fun enough, and it takes time to figure out how to get that thing right and how to get it to be fun, engaging, and just kind of work right and really get the players excited. So you got to plan for at least a little bit. And I'd say on any project, on any team, be ready to put in a little bit of extra work every now and then when it's required. But most importantly, just make sure that you're getting your stuff done. If you're getting everything done that needs to be done when it needs to be done, this is much less of an issue. It's a big, big issue if you don't plan right, or you procrastinate, or you just don't set good estimates. But if you can get around all of that and you work with a team that's generally responsible, you really shouldn't experience much crunching at all. In fact, there have been plenty of places that I worked where there's zero crunching and it wasn't even allowed. So again, don't get discouraged. Don't think that, hey, if I go work for a game company, I'm going to lose my entire life. I'm not going to have time for friends. I'm not going to have time to play any games or do anything because I'm going to constantly working 80 hours a week. That is an option. You just have to choose not to pick it and go with something else. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with all your friends and that stuff. Have fun. Go get cool code jobs.